giving consent for recording of the meeting. Phil, do we have any apologies for absence?
So I've received apologies from Councillor Amin and Councillor Ojuho.
Thank you. Do we have any urgent business that's not on the agenda?
No, there's no urgent business, Chair.
Do we have any declarations of interest? Okay, no declarations of interest. Do we have any deputations this evening?
We were going to have a deputation, Chair, around Queenswood, but the people who wish to give that deputation have subsequently withdrawn it, so there are no deputations.
Thank you. Before we go any further, I would like us to just, could everybody who's on screen please introduce themselves, because you come up just with your initials and I have absolutely no idea who's in the meeting at the moment. So if I could ask, if I could read out your initial and if you could just introduce yourself. CA, or if you could introduce yourself one, yes, CA, please.
Ah, I'm on mute, sorry. Apologies. I think it might be AC, which is me, Anne Cunningham.
Okay, thank you. And I can't now see the initials, so if you could just come in, just go to participants. Okay, Matthew, could you introduce yourself, please?
Good evening all. My name is Matthew Dewey. I'm the Finance Business Partner for Environment and Neighbourhoods.
Thank you. Councillor Chandwani.
Councillor Chandwani, Cabinet Member for Customers Welfare and Public Realm.
And Simon Farrow.
Hi everybody, I'm Simon Farrow. I'm the Council's Interim Head of Parks and Leisure.
And Mark Stevens.
Good evening, everybody. Mark Stevens, Assistant Director, Direct Services.
And Alex Fraser.
Good evening. I'm the Tree and Nature Conservation Manager.
Thank you. And Rob Krasowski.
Thank you, Chair. Rob Krasowski, Assistant Director for Planning, Building Standards and Sustainability.
Thank you. We have a couple of guests that I have, but I'm not sure who they are. Okay, thank you. Hubert Malcolm. Hubert, are you in the meeting? No. Do we have John O'Keefe in the meeting yet?
Hi, yeah, John O'Keefe, Head of Finance for Environment and Neighbourhoods in Regen.
Thank you. And do we have Andrew Taylor?
Yeah, good evening. Andrew Taylor. I work for Corporate Finance for Environment.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that I've missed out? Who? Councillor Dogan. Sorry. Councillor Dogan.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Councillor Adele Dogan, new Cabinet Member for Stronger and Safer Communities. I'm just here with, but I think it's not my turn, but I would like to make, if you give me an opportunity to say a few words, I will be much grateful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And if we could just briefly go around the room so that anybody who's watching knows who's here. Oh, Hubert's here. Hi, Hubert. Could you just introduce yourself for the people watching? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hubert Malcolm, Assistant Director for Stronger and Safer Communities. Good evening.
Thank you. If we could just briefly go around the room. Councillor Hakata.
Mike Hakata, Cabinet Member for Environment, Transport and the Climate Emergency.
Councillor.
Councillor Scott Emery, Muswell Hill Ward. Ian Sygrave, co-opted member.
Philip Slaughter, I'm the Scrutiny Support Officer.
I'm Councillor Donna Carlin, Chair of this committee.
Gideon Ball, White Hart Lane Ward.
Eldridge, Culverwell, Stroud Green Ward.
Thank you, everybody. If we could not turn to the minutes, do we have any comments on the minutes? Yes, Councillor Ball.
I suspect because she's got a lot on her plate at the moment, but if Ruth could come back with regen officers, just to update the panel on what they're doing to tackle the issue of empty shops, empty buildings and shop fronts, and the impact that has on crime and antisocial behaviour. That would be really handy. I know from my own experience it's a really difficult issue to tackle, but at the risk of, I don't want to open up a debate, but when you've got a road where the shops are closed, abandoned, or the shutters have smothered in graffiti, not street art, the graffiti, it just takes the whole tone down, and it lends itself to a council that doesn't care, and I know that we do care, and I know from my experience we definitely care. So if Ruth can get something to us, that'd be great.
Thank you. Can we make a note of that, Phil? Thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah, not a council action, but something which perhaps we could remind the borough commander. You'll recall that when he came last time, he presented a series of slides which we only saw instantaneously, and it was impossible to get your head around all of the figures and statistics. And we have requested, I think, that they should be presented in advance so that we can ask some meaningful questions.
Thank you.
Sorry, just to say, I do have the slides. I thought I'd circulated them. If I haven't, then I apologise, and I will do so immediately.
It was not so much that as just to let him know in the future we would hope that they'd be presented in advance.
Thank you. We now have a trees update. You should have, the presentation is in the pack at page, don't know what page, 9. Simon, who's presenting the trees update?
Chair, I'm happy to, thank you.
Thank you.
Is it helpful if I share it on the screen?
That would be helpful for people who are watching from home, so yes, please.
Okay. Okay, can you see that now?
Yes, thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, so I was asked to update the committee on a number of aspects which we'll run through that are in the papers, and Alex is here to alongside me to answer any questions at the end of this. So just in terms of moving this on, 1 second. Okay, so the first area I was asked about was Queenswood, and for those not familiar, we have an issue at Queenswood which related to 5 oak trees that in approximate very close proximity to a house on Woodvale.
Sorry, Simon, can you just hold on for a minute? Sorry, can we please, is there anything that you can do to clean the sound slightly? No, thank you.
The problem is at his end, his mic's distorted. Has he got a headset? Because he's talking straight into a mic on his laptop. I think that's probably what's called. His laptop mic's probably too high. Yeah, so he needs to take the mic down.
Okay, Simon, could you turn your laptop mic down slightly if possible? But at the moment, I can't really hear much of what you're saying.
Okay.
Because it's quite distorted.
Is that any better?
Yes, a lot better. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll try this then. So so as I was saying, there are 5 oak trees in Queenswood which are adjacent to a house on Woodvale. There's been previous subsidence at this house that the council has contributed to in terms of cost of sorting out, and there's an ongoing subsidence claim there, and probably summer, not this year but the year before last, we were as a council ready to remove 4 of these trees, which are in the closest proximity to the house. There was a protest by local campaigners, and they were able to engage with the insurance company pretty much on the basis of kind of greenwashing at the time, and they felt that the council shouldn't be liable to lose the trees or pay for the property damage. Obviously, that's not the legal position, but the conclusion of that was that AXA decided to review the trees and the movement of the house for a further 12-month period. That 12-month period ends this month, and then they'll produce a report. And we are therefore expecting to probably hear something probably February or March time as to their future, their findings, having followed this further period of monitoring. So at the moment, there's nothing happening with these trees. They remain as they are. And once we get that report back, we'll be able to consider it as a council alongside the council's insurance section and the council's insurers to decide what happens next. So the current situation is, in effect, we're in a period of wait and see in relation to these particular trees. The second aspect that I was asked about was around what lessons had we learned around the tree removals that we've were undertaking on Parkland Walk associated with the actual winter maintenance works that we did up there at the same time. And I've listed out the lessons here that we've learned, and I think it's since those works took place, I think with the council has taken a position following the new administration coming in around a view around co-production as the way to go, and I think that's very much leading into where we are now. And I think, you know, I guess the key lesson for us there as a team, as a set of officers, is that we probably need to do a better job of explaining the rationale and the reasons and taking people through the decision-making process, so people could come with us on that journey, that they could have all of the technical information that was available, that we had available to us, and that we would be able to walk residents through that detail and allow them to be better informed as to the rationale and the information that was there, so that actually we could come to, you know, a joint decision about a way forward, always remembering that, you know, in some instances there are, you know, fundamental technical reasons why we have to do stuff. And I think we would take a more piecemeal approach to these works over a longer period of time. So I think they're the key things, but as I say, there are a couple of slides there in terms of lessons learned. The next issue that we were asked about was around staff and resources, and it's very true to say that staff and resources in the tree team have been very short for a couple of years now. The council has had trouble recruiting into roles and has had to kind of reevaluate what we pay for these roles, because there isn't a large pool of people to recruit from. And so we've been through a process where we have been able to reevaluate these roles and re-advertise them, alongside which we've been working with planning colleagues on adding a additional senior arboricultural officer, purely to look at planning aspects of trees. So that will be tree preservation.
Apologies. You may need to move the slide on at the same time as the presentation. Apologies. Just for everybody else who's watching at home.
Oh, I thought I had. So
we're still on the opening slide. There we go.
There we go. Okay, so it's obviously I've got too many screens and it's not working in the right order. So hopefully you can see that screen now with the staffing structure. Is that what I'm seeing now?
perfect. We can carry on from there.
Yep,
Thank you.
brilliant. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. So yes, so we've added a senior arboricultural officer that's working specifically on planning, plan applications, tree preservation orders, conservation area work to request, and that will really help in terms of supporting our colleagues in the planning department and more timely responses. What is also good to say, it's great having a nice structure and have it properly evaluated, but we have actually been able to fill all the vacancies, so that hard work has paid off. And one of the new arboriculture officers has started. The senior officer will start sometime in January, and the last ARB officer is probably late February or early March in terms of that. So within the next couple of months, we'll be fully staffed, and that's gone from what was 2 officers trying to cover that tree patch to 5. So that's great. We're also being able to add, as part of the work we're doing, an apprentice into the team, and this will really help with a local young person being able to join the tree and nature conservation team and to be gaining some skills there, so we can grow some of our own talent into this team as well. The next issue I was asked about was the removal of street trees, and what I've laid out on this slide is that there are 4 sets of circumstances in which we remove street trees in the borough, and in fact other trees as well, maybe in parks and green spaces on Harringay land. So if the tree has to be dead or visibly in decline and have a limited life expectancy, so that's one. There's maybe presence of fungal brackets indicating possible root and trunk decay and other visible defects that impact the stability of a tree and present a hazard. There needs to be evidence that has been provided to show that there are contributing factors in causing subsidence, damage to adjacent property, and that proactive tree management has had no effect, or that they're causing a significant damage to the public highway and engineering solutions are not feasible to allow retention. So they're just so that people don't think we take these trees out on a whim. They have to meet one or more of those criteria in order for us to recommend the removal of a street tree. And just to round that up, in the last 10 years, we've removed 1,900, just over 1,900 street trees with an average of 191 a year. So just moving on to being able to replace some of those trees removed and to grow the canopy in the borough. We were asked about funding for replacement trees, and that comes from a number of sources. So in the council's existing capital budget, there's provision of £100,000 worth of capital money, which is made up of £70,000 of council capital money, and there's an expectation that we will go out and fundraise £30,000 of match. So assuming we raise that 30,000, we can spend the 100,000. We've submitted a new bid to increase that council capital for funding by a further £75,000, and in the draft budget that was approved by Cabinet last week, that's in there. People will be aware that we've launched a new tree sponsorship scheme this year in partnership with Trees for Streets. That's been incredibly successful. Just to put that in context, in a normal year, we would get around 6 to 12 sponsored trees through partnering with Trees for Streets. We've been very, very successful, more successful than we expected to be. And we've got over 200 trees that have been sponsored this year, and I'll come back to that in a minute. We've been very fortunate to be supported through the Neighbourhood Community Infrastructure Levy, and we were able to secure £48,000 in the last round, and we would hope, as those funding opportunities come around again, we'd be able to bid in there, and those programmes are every kind of 2 to 3 years. And we do work with our colleagues in the highways team who, through their Footway improvement programme, will explore opportunities for tree planting within their schemes, and therefore adding canopy cover on roads potentially where there wasn't trees previously. we also benefit from one-off external grant funding. We were successful in the first round of the government's Urban Tree Challenge Fund, and we're able to get funding for 584 trees from DEFRA and the GLA. And in the subsequent round, we were recently advised that we have been successful and we'll get funding for another 171 trees. We, from time to time, get new tree planting on the back of housing development, and certainly working with our regen colleagues in the regeneration schemes, and things like corporate sponsorships. So Spurs and Sky this year have sponsored 60 trees, which we've been planting in partnership with the community on dairy fields just off of White Hart Lane and a couple of other sites. And we continue to explore new partnerships with people like Trees for Cities to generate further funding for schemes in Haringey. So that's where we're on tree funding for new trees. And lastly, just to give you an idea in terms of the sponsored trees and the spread of those trees across the borough, that gives you some idea of both individual trees and where groups have come together and sponsored a whole raft of trees in their particular street. There's been great success, and people like Councillor Chanamani have been working with their local schools to raise funding for a number of trees close to the schools in the West Green area. So that's been incredibly successful. What you don't see on there is grant funding that Trees for Streets.
Thank you. That's really useful. Does anybody on the panel have any questions?
Yeah, finished.
Is he finished? Is he frozen?
Apologies, I'm back now.
Sorry about that. I thought you just stopped abruptly.
I did. Sorry, the council's IT system cut me off, so I'm back now. So apologies for that. I was just saying, so in terms of this map, this shows individually sponsored trees in the borough. But what you don't see on there is that Trees for Streets have also brought funding into the borough, which allow us to plant trees in low canopy areas, particularly in the east of the borough. And so there's a number of trees that will come in there. Equally, we've had some tree sponsorship in areas from the west, which have also then funded trees in the east of the borough. So we're getting a good spread of individually sponsored trees throughout the borough. So that's something that has been, as I say, more successful than we expected it to be in its first year, bearing in mind we only launched it in July this year. Happy to answer any questions.
Ian, and then Scott, and then Councillor Calverwell. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that report, Simon. I wonder if I could just ask two questions. One is on the report that you've just given, which is page 15 in our pack, you say that on average 191 trees are removed by the council in the course of a year. In the capital bids section of the agenda pack on page 80, it says that the council currently fells around 300 trees a year. That strikes me as quite a big disparity. So I wonder if you could explain the difference in those figures. And the second question is that I'm pleased to see that the tree section is up to full strength finally. Many of us, myself included, have been struggling to get any sort of response from tree officers during the course of the year. In my own case, I waited 5 months and a number of chasing emails before I had any reply. Now, I appreciate that you're understaffed, but I do think that as a matter of courtesy and good practice, you should at least be getting back to people saying, sorry, we can't answer at the moment. We are understaffed, but we are aware of your case, rather than a deafening silence for 5 months, which I think is pretty discourteous at best.
Chair, come back on both of those points, and Alex might want to contribute specifically to the correspondence one. So we are, as I said, I presented the 191 as an average. Of late, we've been removing more trees, but that's primarily because we've built up a bit of a backlog of trees that needed to be removed, and therefore the numbers in the most recent years have been greater, and particularly because we've felled a number of trees in parks as opposed to on the streets as well. I'm disappointed to obviously hear about your experience in terms of correspondence. I'm obviously not au fait with your particular thing you raised, Ian. And we have been at 40% capacity as opposed to the 100% we should have been at, and it has impacted staff, and they've been working incredibly hard. So I'm really sorry about that. I hope that's not a wider experience, and that's an isolated case. But obviously, we would not expect that to be our normal way of doing business. Alex, I don't know whether you want to add anything or.
I can only apologise in person to Ian for that, for not responding to his original email. I think it's regarding a TPO, proposed TPO for trees on Whiteman Road. They've now been surveyed and the documentation is being prepared to submit to the planning service.
Thanks for that, Alex. Could I just go back, Simon, to clarify? So you're saying that when you're giving an average figure in one report, you might only be talking about streets, and when you're talking about one in another report, you might be talking about streets and parks, hence the disparity. And if that is the case, then that certainly needs to be made clearer if my understanding of what you've said is correct.
Yeah, that's correct, Ian. The specific question we're answering in this presentation was around street trees. The wider thing in the capital bid is around all trees being felled in the borough, and so yeah, that's the difference.
Thank you, Councillor Emery.
Thanks for that. Alex, your mic is a bit poor, so if you say something again, I'd probably recommend going a bit closer to it. Sorry, Ian nicked my first question, so I'm going to come back to where I was before, which was, oh yeah, Parkland Walk lessons learned. A lot of the lessons learned here seem to be focused on optics and public understanding. Another issue raised at the time that wasn't mentioned here, wasn't mentioned here, missed at the time, was that the works were beyond the original scope, and there are to be issues related to the base of the contractors involved. And they said that in future, regular vegetation maintenance along the walk will be carried out by the council's own in-house parks operation team. That was something you said last time, and I see that missing on this report here. I'm just wondering if that was still part of the lessons learned.
Sorry, most of us online missed most of that, but I caught the end of it. In terms of yes, what we've without taking up the rest of your evening, but the Parks and Leisure Service has just been through a fairly fundamental restructure, and we have now included the regular maintenance of Parkland Walk within the scope of some roles within the structure, and therefore we'd expect that to be a much more regular activity. I think part of the problem, as I have laid out there, was we hadn't done maintenance of that kind of nature for some considerable time due to austerity, and so it wasn't something people would be regularly seeing. But that structure has literally come into place yesterday. And therefore, I would expect the much more regular maintenance to be going on the walk, which wouldn't seem so large scale, if you like, because people weren't used to seeing it. And I think lots more people see it now because of changing working patterns and a greater association with the green space in their local area because of lockdown and the pandemic. So we have made those changes, yes, in short.
Thanks for that. Just moving on to page 16, which is the funding of the new trees. I have a few issues or some worries with this new funding. So some of the council funding that is in the standard trees budget has been moved into the matched budget. Now, does that mean that money that's been moved from the standard trees budget into the matched budget would then be stuck there until it can be freed up by a matched bid from local residents, for instance? How would that money then be able to, would it be easy for that money to be taken out of there if the match funding didn't materialise, as if the residents funding didn't materialise?
So just to clarify and answer your question. So within our existing capital provision, the council has put £70,000 into that funding. I have authority to spend up to £100,000, subject to me obtaining that much funding. And it could come from a number of sources. It could come from a grant. Quite often, Alex is very successful in extracting money from the GLA, and so typically we would get somewhere in the region of £30,000 to £40,000 a year in terms of grant from the Mayor's office. There might be other grant funding in terms of some park schemes, etc. So it's not that it's moved into match, it is the match, and therefore if I wasn't to get any grant funding, either through a grant from external person or through sponsorship of schemes of trees in the borough, then I would only have authority to spend £70,000. Does that make it clearer?
Yes, I think that makes it a little bit more clear. Chair, do you mind one more question? It's on the Queenswood situation. Obviously, that's my own ward, so it's something I'm quite understanding with. If the council is faced with the same position as before the moratorium, would it make the same decision as before the moratorium?
So I think that's, yeah. So what usually happens in these situations is trees are taken out in terms of mitigating the cost exposure to the council, which can often run into hundreds of thousands of pounds. And therefore, usually there is a situation where it is in the council's interest financially to remove the trees as a way of mitigating its financial exposure, because the insurance companies will seek to reclaim their cost from the council, and they will have gone through the process of establishing that the trees are at least contributing to the subsidence. So there is a claim there to defend. So we would be likely, if nothing changed, to be in a position where we would be agreeing to the removal of 4 of the 5 trees.
I understand the difficulty of the situation. It might be worth, again, I think it was mentioned at the time, the same kind of thing, making some kind of representation towards the national government to try and alleviate this situation, because obviously it's a situation that's being faced across the country, not just in Haringey.
I agree, and I'd want to reassure you that I've personally pushed both our internal legals and insurance legal on this issue. Unfortunately, this is tied up in the tort of nuisance, and we'd be fundamentally trying to unravel a few hundred years of legal precedent. So it's quite difficult to challenge it. They have assured me that there may be a specific case in which we might be able to get a very narrow judgment, but this isn't that case, and so we are faced with a decision in terms of the best use of public funds, in terms of how the council wishes to proceed, and obviously we would be discussing that with members when this situation comes back in front of us.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Calverwell, do you have a question?
Good evening, Simon. I have a couple of questions, but I'll just try and skirt through them all. Firstly, I'd like to talk about the Parkland Walk, Stationers Park, Finsbury Park, and on all these places, I feel they're felling trees unnecessarily. So for the first one, the oak tree on Stanhope Bridge, where it's a beautiful oak tree, and you're talking of putting a path to from down to the road. Can we not leave that tree there? Because I've been there, and there's enough space, I feel, without having to fell that tree at all. Finsbury Park as well, there's talk of felling some trees, and the trees over there are so useful to all the wildlife, the birds, the bats at night. And talking of Finsbury Park, I sincerely hope we don't put any lights in there at night, because there's a lot of nightlife for the bats, and I said the different animals that use Finsbury Park. The Peace Garden, I don't know if you're aware of the Peace Garden in Stapleton Hall Road. There's a tree there that is lined. I can't understand why this tree is earmarked to be felled. I walk past it almost every day, and I can't see any reason for why they want to fell that tree. And earlier on, you said the issues on protecting trees can run into thousands on with insurance companies. Do we not have a history of trees that might get have kind of whatever kind of sicknesses, and that we don't sort of go in buy those kind of trees? Or don't we have a history of what trees are best for the area under the circumstances, the weather, and everything? That's it.
Okay, so I'm going to take a couple of those questions, and then I'm going to ask Alex to come into some specific details if he has them. If not, we'll come back to you with a written response and share that with the panel. So in terms of the oak tree on Parkland Walk, the issue is not the access path to that tree, but the works to build a new bridge, in that the new bridge has to be higher than the existing bridge, and therefore there's a build-up of soil that would interfere with the root plate of that oak tree, and therefore it's likely that that tree will be killed in the process of construction of the bridge, and therefore we have chosen that route as the way up to bring the slope up through there, because that tree will be removed as part of the works anyway. So that's where we are on that. It was considered at planning committee last week, and we were granted planning permission for the construction of the new bridge. So that's Parkland Walk. I'll come back to the trees. I'll ask Alex to come back to the specifics about the trees in Finsbury Park and the Peace Garden. But just in terms of generally in tree purchase and trees within the borough, you're absolutely right. There are an awful lot of emerging and tree diseases that are with us now, and they're here, and we're having to manage them, and we're having to deal with them. And some are, either affecting humans, shall we say, things like oak processionary moth, which is affecting some of the oak trees in the borough, is potentially affecting for humans, and therefore we're treating the nests and the moths as part of that, and the caterpillars. And others are causing, decline in particular species, and we've seen things like ash dieback that is affecting not just Haringey but nationally across the borough. So it's a real issue. And I think, there has been, shall we say, biosecurity issues from previous generations, not future generations, which have, led to these issues coming into the borough and into the country as a whole. So we do typically try to plant trees which are easier to maintain, don't need as much maintenance, don't give us some of the issues that the forest type trees that are beautiful in many of our roads in the borough, but do require an awful lot of maintenance. I think one of the things we're trying to do around some of the insurance related tree removals is subject to the council's draft budget being approved. We'll have an increase in our ability to maintain those trees more regularly, which should help us to retain more trees over the longer term, because we will be able to either avoid or mitigate the impact on buildings as a result, because large parts of Haringey sit in high risk areas for subsidence, and with climate change that's only going to get worse. And so this is a very much a proactive approach to increasing the maintenance of the trees in the borough so that we can retain more trees and avoid damage to residents' properties from our trees. So that's we are doing that, and I think, you know, we do have a list of trees that we choose from which are better suited to the borough than those that were planted 2, 3, 4 generations ago, with all the best intentions, but we live with the liability of those today. Alex, did you want to comment on Peace Garden, if you know, and Finchley Park?
Yeah.
Sorry, Alex, could we have a written response to that, because we're running a little bit short on time on this item? So on the specifics, Aldridge, I'll give you a written response on those. They can go away and get the details. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you. Councillor Bull.
So I've got 2 very quick questions and 2 very quick comments. So my 2 quick comments, gents, thanks to the work you did with Friends of the Earth to plant the trees on the dairy fields next to Rowland Hill Nursery. That was great, and we got some kids helping us plant, so that was brilliant. And also it's good that for someone like me that represents a ward that's got a very small park like Tower Gardens, that officers don't treat that park any differently to any other park. So we have a good relationship with Chris Patterson, so thanks for that as well. So my 2 questions are around some of the trees we've got in White Hart Lane. I don't want this to be a big casework discussion, so it's more of a general question. So we've got 2 roads in the ward that have got lots of trees on them. One of them is Rivulet, and the other one's the infamous Roundway, and they're big trees. So do we do any regular assessment of roads like that in terms of the level of maintenance? So Alex will know there's a big tree in the front of Fenton Road, 1 to 7 Fenton Road, which requires a lot of maintenance. Are we looking at perhaps reviewing some of those trees and perhaps, looking to plant something a little bit more sensible? That's the first one. The second question is, one thing that's jumped out at me when I did quite a lot of door knocking in Haringey Ward back in the day, there's a number of roads on the ladder where we've planted cherry trees, and they are shockers for being street trees because they just bring the tarmac up. Have we got any figures that you might want to provide as a written response of how many insurance claims we've had because of damage caused by trees that we planted back in the day that we wouldn't plant now? Thanks, Donna.
Alex, do you want to answer those?
Yeah, I mean, for the last 8 to 10 years, we have all the new street trees have been planted with a root barrier to try and minimise the future damage of the footway. We recognise that quite a number of the most popular trees that were planted previously, such as cherries, such as Norway maples, they're often not suited to a footway environment, and they end up causing significant damage and have to be removed. We are considering quite carefully what species we plant now. I know the tree you talk about in Fenton Road. It's a lovely tree. It provides lots of benefits to that area. There is a few residents I think it's a bit of a nuisance, but the additional maintenance money that we get will allow us to increase the pruning of some of these trees that many people consider a nuisance or that are a risk, or a heightened risk of causing subsidence in the future, because we are getting challenged now on every tree that we remove. So we need to do as much as we can to try and retain the ones we've got, even if it means spending a little bit more money and pruning them on a 2 or 3 year cycle rather than a 4 or 5 year cycle like we have done previously.
Thank you very much. If I could just come in, and for Councillor Hakata as well. It really does seem, in terms, what would be useful is to do a cost analysis of the amount that we're paying out in insurance claims as opposed to actually maintaining pollarding and maintaining those trees, because it seems like we've had a false economy of cutting back on the maintenance and therefore having to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds instead on paying out insurance claims out of a different pot. So a cost analysis of that would be really, I think, quite useful, because it might be that in actual fact we need to have more money even than is proposed in the revenue budget if we're spending a lot of money on insurance claims. The other thing that I would just like to raise as a point, not necessarily as a question, is that across the borough we have vastly different amount of tree cover, and unfortunately it's the areas where we have the most deprivation that have the fewest trees. And the only thing that concerns me slightly in terms of tree replacement policy is that where we're losing trees is probably to a large extent in the areas where we have the most trees already. And then how much of our funding is therefore going to be replacing trees in areas where we already have quite a lot of tree cover. And so I would be quite interested, although it wasn't the scope of this paper, but to have an analysis of what we want the tree cover to be across the borough, so that any wards, and I know Ian informed me recently, any wards that aren't coming up to our minimum tree cover for a ward, that those are prioritised, because really, you know, when you go around certain areas on the east of the borough, there are no trees, or very, very few trees, and in summer you really feel it in terms of the air pollution. It makes such a difference. And in terms, we know, in terms of antisocial behaviour, all kinds of things improve when there's more tree cover. So I understand the policy of replacing, but I'd quite like to see a policy of tree cover across the borough, so that the east has as many trees as the west, and that may not match with the replacing trees. But thank you very much for your presentation. That was really excellent. Thank you very much. If we could go now on to the next item on the agenda, which is my agenda. I think we have a verbal update from Councillor Hakata and some questions following, if that's okay. So Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't expecting to actually give a verbal update. I thought it was a Q&A, but
we could go kind of, if you.
Yeah, that might be best. Otherwise, I'll just rattle on like, and you'll have questions that you wanted to ask anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, do we have questions for Councillor Hakata? Anybody? Yes.
Stop. I thought you might mention the Edmonton incinerator.
Councillor Caldwell.
Yes, thank you very much. What, if anything, is the council, or what is the council's plans on educating the young children regarding greeneries, trees, etc.?
Good question, Councillor Caldwell. I mean, I think one, you know, what we're looking at is certainly expanding engagement, looking at how we can involve people who aren't, if you like, the usual park users, people that are involved in conservation work and nature reserves. So we are, as Simon spoke about, we have gone through a parks redesign of the service to staffing structure, and in that there was going to be a new role of an engagement officer, and part of that role will be to look at that kind of thing and outreach as well. But absolutely, I mean, in terms of, you know, that's actually a high priority in terms of the park service at the moment is about reaching out and engaging with schools, with, if you like, the hard to reach sector, getting more people who aren't traditionally park users to get involved in the parks.
Are you working with the government on this?
That's a good question. I don't know if Simon has, he might know directly, but I think absolutely, we're obviously what we can do and should do is definitely be speaking more with our local MPs on how they can push in Parliament for that greater engagement. Absolutely.
Chair, did you want me to comment on that?
Thank you. Yes, that would be useful.
Thanks. So yes, so as Councillor Carter has mentioned, part of our restructure has put back into the team some additional resources for both community engagement and for a full-time volunteering officer as well. And therefore, once they're here, they'll start developing key programs around our engagement. So some of the work we've done to date on the emerging Parks and Green Spaces strategy, which includes a new tree and woodland plan, has identified inclusion as one of our key aims going forward. And we, there are a number of groups that aren't represented in what we do when we're planning spaces, etc., getting involved in projects. And so we'll be wanting to use all the great opportunities that are in parks to engage a wider group, and therefore by engaging a wider group to be hearing more feedback about what people think about the parks, how they can be improved, and what they want to get involved in. And I think this will be a great investment to have 2 full-time officers who will be able to work on this and progress it and make sure we're doing that. In terms of working with the government, that comes in many forms. Often either through policy or through grant funding, and we try to engage with them as much as that as possible. So a lot more to come in this area over the next 12 months. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, just as one bit that we didn't mention there was just that obviously that as you mentioned was the deficiency in open space in the east of the borough, and obviously that is going to be a major focus, as well as looking at ways in which we can increase that engagement. One of the things that is going into the Parks and Green Spaces strategy is an annual celebration of community involvement. So, and that would be something that we would look to, especially in the east. Thanks.
Thank you. Slemery?
Thank you. I'm going to start with flooding. I can see, I think it was this morning or yesterday, that the announced plans to improve the network have been pushed back to be completed by this summer. Just wondering if you could just give me an update on about what caused that and why the fixing of the gullies have been pushed back until summer.
It is unseen, I'm afraid, yeah.
My apologies. Do you mind if I move on to the next question? So there's gullies that are being fixed across the borough in different parts because of flooding issues, but I mixed up Councillor Chandwana with the person sat next to me somehow. Anyway, I'll move on to my other issue. Residents have contacted me to do with EV charging. The new chargers that have been installed by the council, there are some issues regarding them being too slow and also too expensive compared with other private chargers that are nearby. And I'm just wondering if the council could look into possibly improving them in future to make sure that they were viable for people using EV chargers.
Thanks for that. Well, the current arrangement that we have, which is for the for the chargers that are in parking spaces, essentially, that one enables us to massively increase the amount of capacity that we have. So I think we're putting in around 80 new ones over the next few weeks. Now, they aren't the fastest of chargers, that is absolutely true, but it does increase that capacity. At the same time, we're also running a pilot for the lamppost charging as well. So we're looking at ways in which we can kind of expand the offer using different sources. So obviously the ones that you're talking about are Source London charging points, but then we are exploring the lamppost one, and hopefully they can complement each other.
Thank you. Yes, last question.
Last question, Chair. Thank you. So in light of Councillor Ahmed Call asking the North London Waste Authority to consider a pause and review, does that statement by Councillor Ahmed have any impact or any bearing on your vote on Thursday?
Well, as I've repeated a few times to that same question, as a board member on the NLWA, by statute, it is essential that any decisions I make and any votes I cast are in the interests of the NLWA, and we cannot be mandated to take any position. So ultimately, that is a position that the leader has echoed concerns in the community, which is absolutely her job to do, but she cannot mandate me in terms of how I vote, and I will have to vote by statute, by law, in the interests of the NLWA. And if the interests of the NLWA happen to align with those views, that is the way I'll vote. And if they don't, I will explain that on the day when I cast my vote. Thanks.
So it doesn't have no impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ball.
Right. So from remembering what your portfolio covers, there's obviously some need for some joined up working between you and SEMA. So one of the areas is around recycling. Now, I remember seeing an article on the news well over a year ago, which made my jaw drop, which was that so much of the plastic that we think can be recycled can't actually be recycled, and it's really worrying. So I think there needs to be some work across the borough on educating people on the importance of recycling, but also working with SEMA again, and perhaps you'd like to comment on this. The amount of dumping that goes on across this borough is just unbelievable. My parents live in a very poor part of the Essex coast called Clacton, which is extremely deprived. You go there, you don't see the level of dumping you see here. When my mum came here a couple of years ago, she said, "What's the matter with the people around here? They don't like the area or what?" You know, and that's a really good point. So civic pride is what we need to bring back. When Lorna Reef was a cabinet member in community engagement, we had civic pride, and I think that's something we want to revisit. These are more ideas than questions, but I'll get to one or two questions. So I think stuff like, let me give you a very quick example, and I won't go on too much. I've just had to get rid of my condenser dryer, okay? I put it out for the bulky item, and living on a house in Haringey Estate could be taken away. Someone's already come along, like the old rag and bone man back in there, and taken that away, and we'll probably take some of the parts out of it. We need to be having those sort of discussions with businesses across the borough that can fully utilise some of those things that are dumped out. And also, we used to have a restore down in Ashley Road that would take furniture away. These are some ideas that I'd like you to take and discuss with SEMA. The question I've got is actually around leisure. Leisure comes under you, doesn't it? Has there been any discussions thus far about pursuing perhaps, because I know when you were on the back benches, you were quite vociferous about insourcing or bringing back into house the leisure contract that's currently with, oh Lord have mercy, who's it with? Fusion, thank you very much. I was going to say Viola, certainly not with Viola. So bringing it back in-house, because I know, as someone who's an East of the Borough councillor, but actually one of the most East of the Borough councillors that goes to the West, the disparity between leisure across the two constituencies, Mike, is quite distinct. Park Road compared to Tottenham Green. So I'd like to know what conversations are going to be had about levelling up. Should I use the Boris Johnson expression? I don't think so. What can we do to level up the service across the two constituencies, but also more long term, given the problems that Fusion have faced, whether we're going to be looked to bringing that contract back in house? Thanks, Dana.
Thanks, Gideon. There's some good points and some good things. Just as a personal thing, when I was a little kid, I used to go to Clacton. The Clacton was a holiday destination. So yeah, I mean, I've got some fond memories. I agree absolutely in terms of civic pride, in terms of sort of the environment that we live in, and I think NLWA obviously is in the spotlight right now for the energy from waste plant, or the incinerator as Scott has called it, which is one of its names. But also it actually should be known for a huge amount of work that it does in terms of the reduce, reuse and recycling programs. And it's something that I want to, and I'm speaking with the constituent boroughs as well, about looking at outside of the NLWA, how we can have a less waste, more circular, joined up programme, in like the fact that the government is giving so little support to it. But one thing that the NLWA has done, for instance, in recent weeks, is it launched its mattress recycling programme, and it's recycled over 13,000 mattresses in North London in that time. So rather than you seeing them out in the streets like that, we're getting a very hard to recycle material getting recycled.
Just 1 minute, you can spot a HMO by the amount of mattresses that are in the front gardens. That's a really good initiative. Sorry, go on.
I thought I'd bring this along because I thought you guys would probably be interested in this. So this is the North London Waste Authority Residual Waste Reduction Plan. Now, this was something that was essentially sort of written behind closed doors, as it were. I've been speaking to the CEO of NLWA, Martin Capstick, about, and in fact he's very enthusiastic about the idea of having a proper sort of co-production of the next plan. So obviously your input would be absolutely essential. So in terms of, so I think and that's just part of that whole thing of increasing that whole reuse side of our culture, and really we've got to move on that as much as we can to deliver on the 50% recycling target that the Mayor has given for 2030 for London. And my hope is that we can excel on that in North London and beat that. And leisure. So basically, I mean, obviously we're in a contract with an external body, so there are, but ultimately, obviously, the policy of the council is to have under review any contracts that we do have, and to look at whether insourcing is a better model. Now, we obviously have brought in New River recently, and that has been a really, I think it's a proud moment for Haringey, and it's, internally now under great management, it has to be said. It's someone that has come over from Fusion, and from Park Road, who's doing an amazing job, Will. So I think, that's going to be, if you like, that's kind of our testing ground to see how we can do it. Here's a good moment where we can have a proper look under controlled circumstances. But my long-term view is ultimately that there are a huge number of services that we probably should be delivering in-house. If you like, the basic infrastructure, health infrastructure of the council. So we'll feed back to you as the story develops.
Thank you, Mike. Are there any other questions? Sorry, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. One quick question on transport traffic issues. After all the excitement of the LTNs, I think I'm right in saying that your attention may well be turning to the area of the Ladder, Whiteman and Endymion in the near future. Could I just ask, firstly, assuming that's correct, what the timetable is? And secondly, assuming that it will begin with a consultation, whether that will take the form of 2 or 3 different options presented to residents in terms of reducing the amount of through traffic.
Thank you for that. Well, I would say that the attention, I mean, there's been a lot of balls in the air, and actually the Ladder area and Ladder, Endymion, Whiteman, as you rightly say, have actually, that ball has been in the air. It's just been floating whilst the low traffic neighbourhoods have been moving forward. So it's not that it hasn't been addressed, and sort of pieces have been put into place. So our expectation, well, in fact, the plan is that in January there will be, we've been collecting data, quite extensive data. You might have seen on the ladder and around the Green Lanes area huge amounts of traffic counting machinery, and as well as air quality monitoring taking place there. That is going to be collated in the coming weeks, looked at, number crunched, and then with that data to look at the traffic flows, to look at the kind of traffic that's flowing and where it's coming from and going to, we will then put together, as you say, some preliminary designs. With those, we will go out to local residents, businesses, and ask for their input. So start in a similar way to the low traffic neighbourhoods, a kind of co-production process will start, and that will be February, March of next year. So we would hope that there would be some co-produced designs by around March, sort of early spring next year on that area, with some potentially quite far-reaching solutions. But this will again be down to the residents living in the area to feed into that, and the wider area, I should add. And as you say, it will include Enderminion Road, the Ladder, Whiteman Road, as well as Turnpike Lane. So that whole corridor. And then separate to that, but running concurrently, will be a study on Green Lanes as well, and looking at the ability to accelerate not only walking and cycling, but also public transport on that road as well. And they will be happening together, and we're engaging with the businesses, I should add, on throughout that whole process as well.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. If I may, we have Seema on the call. So if we could just briefly take an answer to your question with regards to recycling.
Hey, good times.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I firstly apologise to the panel? My Q&A was postponed because of a bereavement, but it's obvious that Scott and Gideon do really want to ask more questions. So maybe, Chair, that could be rescheduled so that I don't just squeeze in some really important things in a couple of minutes. So just there was 2 points. There was one about recycling. And I just want to alert, I think there's a paper that's come out, and if that hasn't got to you, I'll make sure that it does. The government are changing the legislation around this. So we've got the extended producer's responsibility, which in English means the people who produce the waste will have to have responsibility of its disposal, i.e. People who have all of the packaging and their cardboard boxes, etc., Amazon, blah, blah, blah. So that is going to be really, really important to how the future of this country is going to dispose of its waste. Because, you know, if they're going to be responsible for disposing of it, then there's a huge new infrastructure. And the other law change is the deposit return scheme. Some of you who are roughly about my age would remember that you used to be able to take your Lucasade bottles back to the shop and get 5p. So it's kind of really similar to that, where people will be able to take back some of their packaging and be able to redeem it with vouchers or money. And again, that's a huge infrastructure change, and that would also make sure that we have to look at how we change how we deliver. If most people are not going to put it in their bin because they can get 20p per can from Morrison's, then we need to look at how that changes. So that's a big piece of work that we've got 2 or 3 years to look at. It's happening all across the country, and it's really embryonic at the moment, but they're at really early stages with consultation with local authorities and the government. In terms of fly tipping, firstly, I think it would be amiss of me not to thank Councillor Ball for his daily 6 o'clock in the morning WhatsApp photographs of fly tipping that he spots on his cycling ride or on his way to the gym in the morning. when I don't get them, I get a bit worried about you, Councillor Ball, so I'm glad that you do send them. Can I say that it's a really complex issue? This is not a situation where, okay, it's just HMOs, so what we need to do is tackle HMOs. There's various reasons that people are fly tipping. Some people don't even know they are fly tipping. They genuinely believe that putting their black bags next to a bin is what you're meant to do. So there's education and information that we need to push out on different levels, and there's different ways that we need to tackle this through enforcement and through education, but also making sure that people are really clear about what they can do and can't do and should do and shouldn't do. It doesn't help when we have things like time collections, which makes people put their rubbish next to a lamppost, because, you know, it gives the impression that that's what you're meant to do. So we are looking at bin containment units to make sure that those people also have places for their bins. I really want to go into a lot more detail on this, but I'm conscious that I've just kind of sort of like hijacked. So if we can do that Q&A for me, I would really appreciate it, and then get a bit more prepared and stop this beeping that's going on in the background. So I have no idea what it is, but I've got to get up in a minute and stop it. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Councillor Chandrawani. You'll be at the next meeting so we can go through it in more detail. Thank you very much.
Chair, do you mind if you just pick up on my point that I raised earlier on about flooding?
Could we leave that, that the flooding is Councillor Chandrawani?
Yeah.
So can we raise that at the next meeting, because she will be at the next meeting? Okay, thank you.
So email me as well.
Happy to, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. We're just running a bit late on our... Okay, so we're now going to look at the budget. We've had the papers as a committee for a while. Who's presenting this paper for us? Yeah. Thank you, John. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Your agenda item 9. There seems to be a lot of echo.
We're fine, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, your agenda item 9 sets out the role of the Scrutiny Committee as it relates to the draft 2022-23 budget and to the draft MTFS. The report has also outlined the approach that's been taken to setting the budget for 22-23. I think the key points are that there are no new savings for 22-23. The budget has funded growth of approximately £11.8 million. And what that does, it allows for the council some time and space to look to achieve its existing savings programme. And it also allows more time for change. And obviously, as you know, we're having a borough plan refresh. So this is a somewhat unusual situation. The next part of the report is a copy of the detailed report considered by Cabinet at its recent meeting, which has all of the assumptions, all of the workings that have given rise to the budget, the draft budget that we have for 22-23. And insofar as I'm able to, I will take and answer questions on those on that report. Your papers also have a further appendix that gives you key lines of inquiry that you may wish to follow, the draft budget and the MTFS. New revenue proposals. Now, normally, I'm sure councillors will over the last 10, 12, 15 years, at this point in the process, we would be looking at budget reductions, and there would be lots of testing of those reductions and challenge to those. But we're not in that situation at the moment. We have new revenue growth proposals. We also have new capital proposals. And those are outlined in Appendix D. And in Appendix D, you have the potential programme, capital programme that could come into existence were Cabinet's consultation proposals taken forward in February and then agreed at Council later on. And finally, just for completeness, you have previously agreed savings in Appendix E. There's one minor word of caution. Whilst the budget report incorporates, as far as we're able to, the announcements as part of the spending review 2021, we have yet to have the local government finance settlement that in detail shows us how spending review 21 flows down to individual authorities. Now, we don't expect that there will be material changes between the budget report you see in front of you and the budget report that will go back to Cabinet in February of 2022. So I think I'll stop there and then I will take questions. You have service officers available to you this evening who can talk to individual proposals, both revenue and capital. So, Chair, thank you.
Does anybody from the panel have any questions? No? Sorry, could somebody just tell us where we are in terms of, I know it's in the papers, but in terms of where we are on the already agreed savings that we're focusing on, with regards to how that's been affected by the pandemic and could be affected by the pandemic going forward? And will there be any implications in terms of our spend if those savings are not met? Thank you.
Chair, if I may. Yep. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
In your papers at page 91, we have the savings track of a 21, 22, 25, 26. And you can see here that they've been RAG rated red, amber, green in the normal manner. To the extent that the savings aren't achieved, we have already factored that into the 22-23 budget. So most of the savings that you see have been affected by the pandemic. Obviously, lots of the parking ones would have done, but lots of these are red because they are going to be delayed. And so we were expecting them in this financial year. To the extent that they're achieved this year, great. If they are not achieved, then they'll be rolled forward as part of the base budget. And we will continue to pursue those savings. As I say, they've already been factored into the general budget report.
Thank you. Then if we could turn to the, to our revenue. So we have the proactive tree maintenance, community safety and high waste drainage and environment and climate investment. I'm on page 75 for the panel. That's great, thanks. And I understand that those are the revenue growth within this portfolio. Do we not have any revenue growth for community safety? Have I missed it?
Councillor, if I could ask Hubert to respond.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think specifically for let's try again. I'm hearing a real echo, Chair.
Sorry, Hubert, we're having difficulty hearing you. Is there any way that we can improve the sound once again? Take person.
You've got a headset, mate?
Nope.
If I move, delay of about 1 second. You hear me? If you can turn your mics off, or
If you turn yours off, signal first, will that help?
I think that works.
Okay, that's better. Okay, there's nothing specifically for community safety and enforcement. Obviously, within community safety enforcement, there is the waste element, but nothing specifically for that, Chair. Is that okay, Chair? Not sure if you heard what I said.
Okay, okay, thank you, Hubert. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Wall, would like to come in.
Hubert, thinking of Somerset Gardens as an example, have we got any strategy to raise some revenue on some of these private landowners who seem to think it's acceptable to have their estates having rubbish dumped here, there and everywhere, which the residents in the borough, because it's in Haringey, think it's Haringey's responsibility. So one of them is Somerset Gardens. In Councillor Chandwani's ward, there's Somerset Close, which is Circle 33, I think, for instance. And we're looking at a medium to long-term strategy of having a policy where we can really go to town on some of these. I love the word recidivists. Anyone watch Porridge? That's the word for you, recidivists. These recidivists that are just completely neglecting the land that they own. So a CPO enforcement policy, please.
So yes, Councillor, as you're aware, we do undertake enforcement action against properties and landlords through our community protection warning and notices to make sure they adhere to their responsibilities. Part of the previous MCFS was try to lever in as much income as we possibly could from housing associations that aren't really disposing of their waste adequately. But as you'll be aware, Councillor, that we know we organisations do have legal responsibility for the waste to be removed, but anything in additional to that. So we are looking, and we have looked into the possibility of doing that above any current responsibilities. But it is challenging, Councillor, as you know, trying to hold residents associations to account. But as you know, we do that quite regularly through our enforcement process.
Thank you. I was wondering, Councillor Dogan, do you think that we? I'm a little bit surprised that we have no revenue, no additional revenue in this budget for community safety, and because my understanding of it is that the team is quite stretched at the moment, and so I'm just a little bit surprised, and I wondered whether there'd been any. I know you only recently in post, but whether there'd been any discussions of this at all. We know that the team was restructured a couple of times and is quite stretched. So yeah, I just wondered if you have anything to say on that.
Thank you, Chair. Well, actually, no, at this present time, because I've yet to have a conversation with my service. And we will look at it and see any opportunities to explore. At this present time, I don't have an answer, but we can get back to you once I have those conversations with my service. I hope that clarifies your question.
Thank you. Councillor Harkar.
I think, Chair, Hubert wants to come in.
Thank you, Hubert.
Thank you. Just to echo what Councillor Dogan has said, the only revenue that we have got was to cover mainly for our CCTV. As you know, that we got £4 million capital into our CCTV provision. What we put in is a revenue bid to cover some of the maintenance and things like that, Chair, if that's helpful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Hubert. I'm aware of the capital grant, but unfortunately, we can't. We need manpower as well, and I'm not sure if we can capitalise that to run that side of stuff. So So that was why I was asked. I just noticed when I was looking through that there didn't seem to be any additional funding for your team, and we know that it's quite stretched. But I've raised that as a point. Councillor Hakata, do you have anything to say on either the revenue or capital funding for your brief? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, not a huge amount. Obviously, Simon and Alex outlined the increase in our tree maintenance team, which has been, I think, increased fourfold. So that's going to be a huge impact, and this is part of our focus and prioritising of the greening of the borough and ensuring that that funds go into that and resources go into that. And as Simon said as well, he mentioned the proactive the input into trees, so additional funds to actually plant trees so that we have a net gain every year. Just quickly on that trees front, we are, as part of the programme going forward, we are developing what we're calling the Haringey Urban Forest. That's in very early stages, so it's not part of the budget process now, but we've just had a planning meeting for that with residents and campaigners, and we'll be looking at a Haringey Urban Forest Festival very early in the new year, which I'll update you guys on and get your feedback on and input in would be great. And I think just to underline the fact that, yeah, the priority is about greening the borough. It is about putting, where we can, putting growth into environment and climate with new resources there, and so finally massive, and also resources into massively improving the quality, the environmental quality of the parks buildings themselves, and especially adding that to the leasehold buildings. And finally, just to say that, yeah, we're also increasing that, knowing that the parks themselves, that through the pandemic, obviously we know the profile of parks was raised hugely. The importance of them probably will not only was set in the pandemic, but with the new ways of working has changed forever, and we're investing massively. So it's like 3 times more than we have historically. We're asking for in terms of asset management, which is the pathways, the bins, the benches, etc., the fences, but also more than doubling investment in active life in parks, so getting people active and enjoying those sort of assets, playgrounds, moogers, etc., etc. Thanks.
Sorry?
Still on page 75, aren't you?
I'm moving all over.
Well, I've got something on 75, if I may.
You may.
And at the risk of waking my Lib Dem friend up here, it's about the highways drainage cleansing and maintenance, Scott. So you want? Yeah, I know. That's fine. Yeah, no, I'm not going to ask him. Don't worry. Seema. So just about the investment, the revenue growth investment you've got for a one-off of 326,000 for 2022-23. Probably for the benefit of residents as well. It would be really good if you could say something about what your understanding is what's the principal reason why we've had these floodings of gullies. So I know we saw a video on WhatsApp with Turnpike Lane, and some of the issues, concerns that residents have got is actually, I suspect it's more about the sewage system we've got wasn't designed to take the level of rain that it took in such a short space of time. But you do get some residents who pick up the fact that they go past a gully and they can see foliage growing out of it, where there's soil blocked in there. And I know that you've said in the past, well, you know, if there's that much rain, it will wash the soil down. I've got a resident, and then I'll shut up after this. I've got a resident who lives in Daubney Gardens in my ward who used to work for Barnet Council. And he says that what they did in Barnet back in the days, they'd go down a road that's got the block gullies, and they lift the gully up, and you've got these huge tongs that you go down and you pick up all the foliage and all the rubbish. And that's the quickest way to get it cleaned. So I know it's really sad. I'm getting like you and I for some of this detail. But do you really think on what basis have you come to the 326,000? And do you think a one-off revenue investment of 326,000 in 2022-23 is going to be enough? Or do you think you might have to come back and ask for more money later on? Hope that helps. Thanks.
Can I just ask Mark to text me if I've got this wrong? But my understanding is once you put something in the budget, then it sticks to the budget. So it's not 326,000 for 1 year. It's 326,000 we're committing to keep in the base budget. So that is 326,000 that will be the normal spend. So the following year we will spend 326. The following year after that is 326. So we are committing in this to spend £326,000 each year of the budget going forward until somebody decides to cut it. Is that helping with that question, Councillor? All of the
Yeah, you're right, and I was wrong. Thank you.
Okay, that's normally the case, but we'll move on. The other thing I just want to correct you on as well, if that's okay, Councillor, because I'm really enjoying this. It's 326,000 revenue plus 355,000 capital. So in total, we're looking at nearly £0.7 million a year. And that's because to do drains has an element of revenue and you also have to have capital on it. In answer to your question, it might not surprise you, but since the summer, I've become a bit of a PhD drain genius. I feel like I can do a Open University course on it. So there was different things that can cause block drains. One of them is the obvious stuff where it's full of stuff. I don't know how old the person is that you've been speaking to in Barnet, but we don't actually suck out manually anymore. We just actually get a sucker and it sucks it out. So that's probably why the drains flood a lot in Barnet if they're doing it like that with tweezers. So we'll move on from that. Just to go back to it. So sometimes the drains are blocked and the grills are blocked, i.e. the visual bit that you see. Sometimes they're blocked deeper down, so it will look completely clean to the naked eye at street level, but when you go deeper down, it's actually there's a blockage going on down there. And that could be a mixture of dirt, but it could be paint, it could be builders putting concrete down there, it could be restaurants putting oil and fat down there. So there's various reasons that happens. Sometimes there's misconnections. Turnpike Lane, we are still investigating with Thames Water, but actually if you remember the videos from Turnpike Lane, it wasn't the water wasn't going down, it was the water was coming up. And that's unusual. Apart from Ghostbusters, I've never really seen that happen before. So I just want us to be clear that it's not just a case of, oh, the council are not cleaning the drains. In Milton Road, in my ward, not only were the drains spotlessly clean, they were actually brand new. They were only 2 weeks old, and they blocked because there is something going on with slow runners further along down the sewer. So they weren't blocked at all. They were brand new and they were still sparkling. It actually is, where does the water go, and what happens to that in that journey? And underneath our ground there is a very complicated spaghetti-like sewage system from the Victorian age, which wasn't really made to have people have power showers and flush their toilets and do all of these things. So we are dealing with something that's quite major, and it does need all of our partners to be on board on that. So our partners in this is, there's us obviously looking at the stuff that's kind of ground level. The best way I can explain this to people is it's just like a body. So we're kind of like the head to the shoulders, and then it becomes kind of like from your torso to your hip, it's very much Thames Water. And then suddenly when it goes into rivers and canals, it becomes from your hip down to your ankle, it becomes very much around the Environmental Agency. And I know in your ward, in Larkspur Close, and in my ward as well with Boardwalk Farm Estate, it starts to go into the River Moselle. So it's very complicated, I guess what I'm saying. I'm more than happy to have anyone who wants to buy me dinner, and I will tell them everything I know about drains because it is so complicated. But to go back to this funding, and that's what we're here to speak about today. This funding is to make sure that we clean every drain. So between now and April the 1st, we are going around cleaning every single gully and drain that there is on pavements and everything. So we start from scratch. And then from April the 1st, with this money, it will be an annual clean, whether it kind of needs it or not, because it would just be an annual maintenance clean of every single one of our gullies in our borough. So we're looking at, I think, Mark might correct me, you can just nod, I think it's 14,000 that we have. And so it's roughly about 14,000. So we're going to make sure we do that. But also within this money is the fact that we don't just come to your roads and clear one drain, but then leave the others because cars parked on this. We have to suspend parking. We have to remove vehicles that are in the way. So we're treating this as a tarmacking situation where you have to move your cars out of the way so that we can get access to the drains, and that costs money too. What can't happen is what we've done before, which is someone's parked on it, we'll come back to it and then forget about coming back to it, and then we get in the mess that we're in at the moment. So I hope that helps answer your question on that part of the budget. Chair, did you want me to speak about the budget in general?
That would be useful, because we have a few things that come under you. So the waste contract changes, which are in the budget, and I was wondering whether they have taken into consideration any of the changes in the new regulations. So there were the separating paper out, for example. Are we going to have to do that, and is that taken into consideration?
So, sorry, turn your mic off. Thank you. Sorry, we get quite an echoed feedback when it's kept on. So just to make sure that we don't conflate two different things, that this budget line in here, in terms of the contract variation for Veolia, is for the current contract. The contract for Veolia will expire in 2025. The work of whether we carry on going ahead with the Veolia contract, bring it in-house, or even go out to retender and go out to somebody else is being done now. But that's simultaneously been done with all of the government changes, which don't come into play until 24-25 as well. So there are two different things here. The reason that this is in the budget and why it's a must do, I'll let Beth explain. It's something to do with an agreement about recycling, and that agreement has come to an end, but the Veolia contract doesn't expire until 2025, and the changes of the new government regulations don't come in until 24 and 25, and therefore there'll be no changes to the contract. But what the options are after that contract expires is being started now because of its complexities. Beth, could you just come in about the money, the revenue about the recycling? I'm saying Beth, I don't even know if she's on the call.
Yes, sorry.
Oh,
Hi. Yeah, the cessation of the waste disposal, is this the, sorry, yeah. So essentially, within the contract, there is an SPI for recycling targets, and there has been some negotiation about achieving these a few years ago and realigning them in view of various reasons, legislation changes, moving to a chargeable garden waste service. There was some changes in the MRF regulations that essentially meant that the targets weren't necessarily achievable. As a result of those conversations and the changes that were implemented, i.e. adjusting of the recycling targets, there was also a further impact in terms of disposal costs, which increased as a result of the recycling rate reducing. So negotiations agreed a set amount that would be paid through the contract, and that's come to an end. So it was before my time, to be fair, in terms of the agreements made and the way that they were profiled over the years, i.e. finishing before the contract ended. So I'm not entirely sure of the background to that, but essentially this is to stop that gap, if you like, until the contract expires.
So just to put that into a different context, Chair, Veolia don't have to pay this anymore, so we've got to pick it up. Is the problem, because that agreement ends this financial year.
Thank you. I'm still not completely clear in terms of our budget. The fact that we're recycling less because not all our recycling's now, things that we were thought we were recycling before, we're not now allowed to class as recycling. And so we're paying more to dispose of our waste. So is there not any invest to save? Like, have we done the figures in terms of how much it would cost us to improve the recycling so that we were recycling more, so then we're paying less for disposal? And at which point in time, is it worth us bringing forward the fact that we've got to separate out, if that means, for example, that we're sending less to landfill?
So can I just, I'll ask Beth to come in our separation. Can I just say that in terms of the 7 London boroughs, we're actually quite ahead in our separation. So we already do a lot of things that the GLA are already asking London boroughs to even contemplate starting. We've already had in here, and it's in the paper that went round, and Beth can just speak about it a bit. In the E&N revenue bid, you can see that there is a bid there for a recycling officer, and that's asking for the council for £30,000. The actual cost of that recycling officer full-time is actually £60,000. So it's a joint investment. Wyolia will be paying the other £30,000 a year. And based on that, that is the sort of way that we're going to do some of the things that Councillor Ball asked about earlier, is how do we make sure that we get the best education, information, etc. out to recycle. I'm just going to ask Beth to go on mute because she's rattling, which is probably cutting me out. It's all right. And she's actually in the middle of doing her recycling. That's what you could hear in the background. Can I just say on this that this is a contractual issue rather than a performance issue? That this £159,000 was already being paid. It's just it doesn't have to be paid by Wyolia anymore. I'm a bit concerned that we might be tying you up with a lot of technical, legal and contractual jargon, and it may be better if we send you a briefing just to outline this a bit more clearly, because I guess I kind of understand it because I get a bit more context about it in terms of Wyolia, but asking this with trying to answer this in 2 minutes is not really going to be helpful to anyone, probably give everyone a bit of a migraine.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Seema?
I think Beth wanted to come in.
Oh, sorry, Beth. Didn't realise you're coming back. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah. Basically, we are already ahead, if you like, in terms of the provision of services that we provide. We already provide, which are also, just for reference, some of the proposals within the impending legislation, i.e. we already provide a separate kitchen waste service to all low-rise properties and the majority of communal properties. We already provide the 6 items at curbside to all low-rise properties and the majority of communal properties and flats above shops. We already provide those same material mix to commercial properties. Again, another thing that's likely to be within the legislation. As part of the work that Councillor Chalmani was referring to in terms of the impending service review and also our commitments under our reuse and recycling plan, we will be modelling exactly what you're suggesting about what we think we can deliver in terms of recyclate streams over the forthcoming years.
Can I just
Thank you very much.
Ireland, you might be aware that we're trialling stuff as well. So you're aware that we trialed textiles collection. In January, we'll be trialling small wee collections. Sorry, I'm speaking in jargon. Small electrical collections, not wee. That's what it's called in jargon. Your small kind of toasters and your lamps, etc. So all of the things that can be recycled, but actually, why would someone take a little toaster and either pay 20 quid to get it picked up or take it on a bus to a recycling centre? It's not realistic, it's not intuitive. So how do we make sure that we can do that? So we're doing a lot of those pilots as well to see if we can get our waste up and collect in different things in other ways. Chair, I'm a bit conscious that I haven't actually spoken about anything in the budget.
Well, you have the floor, so would you,
Okay.
as I don't have any questions from anyone, Councillor Bull has a question.
Okay. Just, I know you want to talk about the budget, and you will in a second, Seema, but something I picked up, mentioned earlier to Mike, was around a little bit of joined up between what he's working on and what you're working on around recycling. And one of the things that really concerns me, you know, I come from a part of town called Manor Park, and back in the day, the old rag and bone man used to come round and take away a washing machine, and there'd be all the parts that you could take out of that to maybe fix someone else's washing machine and to minimise the amount of stuff that would be dumped. And I wondered whether across London, whether you've been involved in any conversations with other London boroughs about what we can do to work closer with businesses. Like, for instance, what happened to me today, the guy came and took my tumble dryer away on a trolley, and I'm sure he took taken it away and probably took the parts out that he could reuse. Rather than, you know, going to a huge landfill where we put all these white goods like fridge freezers and such like. So is there conversations that we could have with businesses about stuff that is being put out as rubbish that could possibly be recycled? Thanks.
The answer to that question is yes, but sorry, someone's still got their mic.
Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, it does echo online. I promise we're not just saying that to wind you up. That's already happening. So actually, there's already an element in national law about recycling. That's your electrical goods recycling. So that's why when you buy a new tumble dryer from Argos, the likelihood is that they would offer you either a paid or free. By the way, do go to John Lewis. They do offer it to you for free. Takeaway of your old electrical appliances. You can go to a place like Curry's, and you can tell them that you purchased something from them before and that it's broken, and therefore you're getting a new one, and they can take your old one. So there's a lot of law around that. When we collect as a bulky waste collection, I'm hoping you did use Viola and you didn't use some guy that you just found a leaflet of. When you do use Viola, you would notice that even if they came and picked up one sofa and one fridge, they'd actually use two different trucks to do that, because the recycling, the small, the electrical recycling, small and large, goes to a different place, and it's doing exactly what you're saying it is. And that's not because corporate companies are minded to be helpful to the environment and the planet. That's because there's a lot of valuable metal in those things. I think Councillor Carter did mention earlier that we are kind of trying to do I think we've started to do something with a small mattress recycling company who was really micro business, and we've increased, the NLWA have increased their business by 300-fold, and they now take all of our mattresses, which used to go into landfill or incineration, and take out the component parts. So you can reuse the textile, you can reuse the springs, you can etc. And we didn't have the capacity to do that before, but they found a way to do it. So we're upscaling their business, and the new eco park will further upscale that to quite an industrial level, to take on board a lot more of our mattresses. So I hope that kind of answers your question. I do also want to say, bearing in mind that I don't want to give anyone any of the wrong ideas, but I think I speak to Mike more than I speak to most members of my family, and a lot of it is on our Venn diagram parts of our portfolio, whether it would be roads, whether it would be flooding, whether it would be waste. So I can reassure the panel that this is not the first time me and Mike have met, and we talk to each other quite regularly.
Thank you, Seema. So in terms of our capital bids, we've got some great bids. I know we're doing, and you've spoken to us before, the funding to improve our street safety, which I think is really excellent. I noticed that one of the bids is for street cleaning, and it's for to replace, it looks like to replace our street sweepers with machines. And I was wondering, in terms of that, we have staff who have worked for us and now we're TP'd over, I think, to work for Veolia for a very, very long time. I mean, we have staff who literally have been working, sweeping our streets for 30, 40 years. And I just wondered if we had thought about how they would be redeployed if we were to bring in mechanised street sweeping.
Thank you, Councillor Carlin. So I think you might be on a page that is talking about mechanisation from previous MTFS. Can I just check if that's what you're asking for?
I'm on page 80, my page 80 of the budget, and it's a capital bid for waste street washing cleaning equipment. Where it says we've identified efficiencies can be achieved through increased mechanised cleaning of high roads, but will need the support of smaller electrical suites to achieve an overall reduction in manual cleaning resource. And my concern about it is that, as I said, we've had people working in those teams for a very, very long time. And I was wondering whether with this we were thinking of how they could be redeployed if we're no longer going to be using manual street sweeping.
Okay, so just to give clarity to everybody, I think two bids, one from a previous MTFS has kind of morphed into this one. So in the previous MTFS, the Cabinet and full council had already agreed mechanisation, and that's currently at trial stage, and we're trialing different roads and different ways of working. What we have found in, and we were kind of aware of this because we checked other boroughs, is these, I don't know if you've seen these mechanical sweepers, but they're basically the size of a mini car, and they've got massive brushes, but they're not going to get into your knots and crannies around bins and around lampposts, etc. So what we then have realised, we already knew this, is that somebody in a mechanicalised sweeper can drive down, let's just say, Tottenham High Road, and then there's going to be another manual sweeper doing the little bits of knots and crannies. The saving came from that previous MTFS saving, because that road sweeper didn't have to sweep the whole road, just had to do the knots and crannies, and then was able to do more. So in answer to your first question, there is still going to be a need until we find robots that can mechanicalise sweep and do everything in little corners. And by the way, if there is that sort of machinery, I'd like to buy one for my own house. Then that's we're always going to need a human to do that. We're working very closely in these trials with our trade unions. It's been offered to people who want to try different things. I would say with our ageing staff team, some of them actually want to now move on to less manual work and actually use the mechanicalisation, so they don't want to clean the whole of Tottenham High Road by foot, because actually they're finding that quite difficult, and so this is a good option for them. In the bid, what you are looking for now is actually we're asking for £96,000 capital bid in order to buy another piece of machinery that will do a couple of things, and basically they're just massive jet washers. So they will jet wash the pavements, and they will also jet wash any graffiti off as well. So we've got one of them already that does graffiti. This will give us 2 graffiti cleansers. But the one that we're asking for does both floor and kind of walls. So in answer to your question about the mechanicalisation, that decision's been made and it's done, and we're currently at pilot stage to wonder if it would work. And the current bid in front of you is just an extra piece of machinery to make sure that the quality of mechanicalisation is better, but we can also double our efforts to graffiti cleanse. And I know that Councillor Ball at the beginning of this said that derelict shops then get covered with graffiti and it looks really bad, and we need one team can't do it, so we need another team with this machine to go out and do that. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. That is really useful because I was slightly confused by that line in the budget. Do we have any other further questions? Councillor Culverwell.
Thanks, Emma. Regarding streets cleaning and sweeping and everything, I live in a lovely tree-lined road, but it's on the brow of a hill. Well, it's on the fall of a hill. And what happens in the winter or when it rains excessively, the rain comes down from the different roads and it sweeps all the gunge, the leaves, the twigs, and it blocks the drains. And then what happens, it goes above the lip of the road and then onto the pavements and then onto over the lip of the homes and then into people's basements. And there's a lot of flats that are basements on the road I live. Now, I don't know if the council was approached on this, but what is the council's stance or who would have to pay for the insurance when the water flows down the hill onto the road, throwing all the gunge into the basement flats?
Chair, do you want me to come back on that?
I think a written answer on that because it's not exactly to do with the budget. Thank you.
Okay.
I think that would probably be better. It's slightly out of the scope of this meeting. We could discuss it when you join us next at the next meeting. Do we have any further questions, Ian?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Seema. Just a quickie to sort of reinforce what you've said about the importance of the drains and gullies. I think the problem, because I remember you and I talking about this a year or two ago at a scrutiny panel meeting, I think the problem is that there's been a historic underspend on drains and gullies, and we're now actually facing the reality of what that means. And I've certainly been chasing one or two locations for, well, the best part of about 2 years. So I'm really pleased to hear that there's going to be the more regular cleansing. I know that at a recent Turnpike Lane strategy meeting, Anne Cunningham said that there's now a plan that every drain and gully will be cleared once a year and the more troublesome ones twice a year, which is great. But what does slightly worry me is that there do seem to be sort of super troublesome ones that block up very, very quickly. I won't bore the panel now with going through the list, but I just wonder if there's provision for that. Certain ones seem to silt up much more quickly than others. And other areas like the drains and gullies in Haringey Passage, which I've been banging on about for ages, just don't seem to get any attention at all because they're difficult to access. And again, I can think of drains there which have been blocked for a very, very long time. So I hope they don't get forgotten in the spend.
Chair, would you like me to come back on that?
Yes, briefly. Yeah, if you would. The question's been asked.
Okay. So I guess, thank you, Ian. I mean, I know it wasn't a question per se. I think it's fair to state that austerity has caused this. So what we have is over years and years and years, people saying the drains can wait another year, the drains can wait another year. You know, we've got to kind of focus on frontline services for vulnerable people, which I totally agree with. But after a few years, after 10, 12, 15 years of it can wait another year, we saw what the damage could be caused. So I'm really glad that we've got this in there. And I do want to pay testament to Anne and her team that even with the most Blue Peter porous budget, some things could have been worse if they weren't resourceful with the little money they had. But this is going to give her the ability to give the gold standard, which I think Haringey's residents deserve. What I'm not going to say to you, though, and I want the whole panel to hear this, is on April the 1st, when I can tell you that every single drain and gully has been cleaned, that if it rains again, it's not going to flood. That's not going to be the case. The water will still go down, but it's going to go down to a sewer system that will overflow. And so you'll just see water coming, not being able to go down the drain because there's too much water in the drain. So this needs to be, this investment's not just about cleaning drains, it's also about looking at those problematic areas which Ian referred to and find out what else could be done there. Could it be a SUD scheme? Could we put in some infrastructure so the water flows in a different direction? So it's not just let's just clean the drains and hope that they work. We know drains are not the only defence to surface flooding, and so we're using this opportunity to I guess what I'm trying to say, Ian, is if we're coming back to clearing the drain 3 or 4 times a year, then we need to look at the drain and therefore see what else can happen. And this is part of what some of that money is about.
Thank you, Seema. Councillor Bull has one further question.
Yeah, so can I ask how we're dealing with pages, this is to you, Chair, and then I'll ask a question of Seema. Can I ask how we're dealing with pages 75 to 93? Are we going to rattle through each page and see if there's any particular points that we want clarification on, and then we'll let the officers and the Cabinet team go, and then we can make some recommendations? That's the way I thought we were going to do it, rather than, you know, we've been asking some quite general questions, which is great on various pages, but if we have some kind of structure where we go through each page, is that okay?
What?
Possibly by exception, if there are any.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if what I've really been looking at
is
whether there are any questions on them, because these are not savings, these are bids,
So
and a lot of them seem to just be really good bids. So I'm not really, I don't necessarily have a question on them, but if you have any questions on the capital bids,
I do. So this is on page 80, and I'm surprised Ian's not raised it, because you and I used to go to the Turnpike Lane business meetings, where Seema, the constant issue about some of the machines that we've had in the past have not actually been up to scratch and not been keeping the streets as clean as they should be. And you know, Som and the guys down in Turnpike Lane have raised this a number of occasions. So I wanted to ask about the baseline increase of 96,000. Will that go some way to addressing some of the concerns of businesses that roads like Turnpike Lane aren't getting the level of cleaning that they claim other roads are getting, with that 96,000 that you're putting in? So that's year on year. That's a question. Thank you.
Councillor Ball, I think, are you talking about the 96,000 that's in the capital bid? Sorry, your mic's still off if you answered that.
No, yeah, I am seeing, because I just wanted some reassurance that the 96,000 that you're putting in is enough, quite frankly, because you and I have been in a number of meetings where businesses predominantly complain more than residents about the state of the streets in terms of the pavement, you know, chewing gum trodden in, and the paving stones just look grotty and all this, that and the other. So, and that all lends itself to, you know, Turnpike Lane is a really important road for the borough, as you know. Quite a big Asian lot of shops down there, people coming from outside of the borough to come and shop. So it's really important that it's appealing and inviting. So my question is the £96,000 enough year on year to address the concerns that businesses have got about some of the cleansing that we've done in the past? Hope that helps.
Thank you. Sorry. So the reason I asked is just so that I'm clear about your question. So I think I'm clear now, and I think there might be some confusion. So the capital bid for £96,000 is for equipment. It's a capital bid. It's buying machinery. It's buying a cleaning system. One that we already have because we use it for graffiti removal, but this one also has the ability to clean floors as well. In answer to your specific question, one of the problems with Turnpike Lane is the fact that it still has time collections, and a lot of the residue on the ground is from, people putting their household waste out there and it's leaking and it's causing stainage and it continues to do so. So the first question we need to ask is, should we spend our resources when we get this £96,000 great machine? Should we spend our resources sending someone down there once a year, and would it make much of impact? No, not really, because within a week it will just be stained again. So the first thing we need to do is find out what's causing the dirt. And we're looking at bin containment. It's very narrow pavements. So it's really difficult for us to do that. We're currently having conversations of how else we can do that. And then, yes, this machine will then clean and wash pavements. But hopefully, because we removed the reason why the pavements are getting dirty in the first place, they wouldn't need as much cleaning. And therefore, I think the money's enough. If we don't do anything about what's causing the dirtiness of the pavement, then no, of course this money is not enough. But why I don't want to just send someone there every week to clean it and not tackle the cause. I'm hoping that's making a little bit of sense.
Yeah, it is. I did understand that it was for equipment team, and I'm sorry to bang on about this, but one of the points that was raised wasn't the fact that the street, Turnpike Lane, for instance, wasn't getting cleaned enough. It was the fact the equipment we had in the past wasn't up to scratch. That's the reason why I asked the question about the 96,000. But I think I've got the reassurance that I've got the reassurance that I've been seeking. And I think, if you're convinced that 96,000 for this extra equipment is going to be enough, then that's great, because you're closer to it than I am. So I'm happy with that, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Ball, can I say that I've been a cabinet member now for 2.5 years, and I have never come to a scrutiny meeting where I've recommended that the scrutiny doesn't recommend that my services get more money. So I don't want to stop you recommending that we should have more money in street cleansing. So if that was what you were hoping to do, please do it, and don't let me talk you out of it.
Niet.
Thank you. Seema, is there anything else? As I've said, I've been through the capital bids and the revenue bids, and I think that they're great. Really welcome investments, and some long overdue. Is there anything that you would like to raise that we haven't spoken about that you think you just like to bring to the public's attention?
So obviously, sorry, Chair, that's echoing. So obviously, one of the things that's in here is a big investment in what's called highways assets. And in that, unfortunately for me, I feel it's camouflaged a lot more better good news stories as well. So you did pull out the road safety one, and that's kind of been sitting on its own, and it's got a bit of attention. But actually in the big juicy bid, there is the carriageway maintenance of C, D and uncategorised roads, which have been potholed and faced neglect for a long time. And the fact that we're talking about putting in nearly £2 million a year into that is really good. And I think that that's been buried a little bit in the way that the finances has come over. I think that the fact that we have acknowledged the fact that TFO are not paying for the principal road network maintenance, i.e. the A roads, your wood green high roads, etc. And we can't carry on paying this game where every year they'll go, next year we'll give you the money, next year we'll give you the money. We're just being bold now and saying that we're going to put our own money in, and if we get the money, that's fine, but what these roads are not going to do is decline. I think that the stuff around the drains, I think we've spoken a lot about, but actually the other stuff that highways do around structures, bridges, even the give way signs that are illuminated and they're all faded, or the lights are busted and broken, actually going out there. And for me, this isn't a highways asset kind of investment. This is a pure wholesale council borough-wide regeneration of our public realm, and I'm really excited, and I really want to thank Anne and her team. It's very easy to be a cabinet member and want to spend money, but it takes a lot of energy to actually put together all these proposals and really measure how much this thing is going to cost and what does it make, what does it do to make our borough be one of the best looking boroughs in London. And I think that this is putting us somewhere there. I would say if we wanted to be a better borough, then we're looking at 50 million. So there are still things that are going to be broken, but 20 million is an amazing amount of investment, and I really hope that Scrutiny, the Lib Dems and the public really support this investment going forward.
I think that's great. I think what you've alluded to is it costs quite a lot of money to spend money, and do we have the capacity in the team to spend the amount of money that we're talking about?
So one of the reasons we didn't go for the 50 million is not because I didn't think we were going to get it, is that we have to be realistic in what we can achieve, what materials are out there, what labour is out there. It's 20 million sounds like a lot of money, but it is a lot of money. It's a hell of a lot of money, but we've broken it down over 5 years. It's not like we're getting the £20 million next week and we're going to have to spend it in year one. That we could do that, but we'll exhaust and burn out our staff and we will be stuck in things. So this is a 5-year plan of what this borough will look like in 2026, 27, and how we're going to work towards it and do it at a pace that's quite reasonable. That said, it's not right that I answer that question. It's right that Anne answers that question, and whether she feels she's got the capacity and that the staff are ready to do this.
Yeah, we're building capacity. We're delighted with the investment, and we're building capacity to deliver, and we look forward to having the opportunity to do so.
But if you want to ask recommendations that we need extra money for more capacity, we're happy for you to do that.
Well, thank you, Sina. Thank you. Are there any further questions on the budget for Sina's team? No?
Thank you, Chair.
Then I think then we're done. Thank you so much for that item. Thank you.
So what do we do now?
What do we do now? We go on to the next item.
No, I don't know. Do you want to have a brief discussion in
the
plenary session around recommendations?
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. Yeah. So,
Do we let all these officers go?
the officers may leave the meeting. We're going to discuss whether we have any proposals, but we don't need you to stay for any longer. Thank you so much for attending tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Good night.
Thank you.
So I'm with you. I think this is a well thought out set of capital bid proposals. I think it's really long overdue that we invest in our streets in terms of keeping them clean and safe. I'm quite pleased about there was a proposal in there that really jumped out at me, and I'm surprised you didn't pick it up, Eldridge, but we can pick it up now. Was about improving the lights in our parks, which I think is so important. Because we really value having very large trees, but with large trees comes reduced light because of the size of the trees in parks. Yeah. So having the extra street lighting or the improved parks lighting, I think is really good. I mean, it's 475,000 in the first 2 years, and it looks like that's going to be 950,000 across the base budget going forward, which I think is a really, really positive step. Just streetlight maintenance in general. I think we know that there's a guy who sits in the cabinet now that when he was a backbencher, John Bevan used to go around the borough actually measuring the brightness of the streetlights because of some of the poor street lighting we've had in the past. And I think investment in LED is a really good step forward. I don't know about you, but I've been to other boroughs, not in London, and the street line is. I know some places where the street line's orange. That's really old-fashioned. So this is. We have had years in the past when we've really had to drill down into the budget and make recommendations about things that have been proposed to be saved. We don't have to do that. So it's not like we should be beating ourselves up and thinking, oh, why haven't we made loads of recommendations? So we haven't been doing our job right and all this, that and the other. No, all we have to say is actually, broadly, we support what's been proposed and recognise the level of investment that's going in. How's that grab you?
Sorry, so let's just go around. Scott, have you got anything to say on this?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would pick up on is the tree planting scheme. The tree planting scheme currently, as it stands, would remain would put the council on a footing where it has a net neutral in terms of cutting down trees and building more trees. Obviously, the last 4 years, the council have been cutting down more trees than they've been planting, so that means that there's a deficit in terms of trees the last 4 years. So I would possibly suggest that we increase that to try and allow to make up for the deficit of the last 4 years. That would be something I would suggest to start with, but it's an option.
As I raised, I think, I was interested that Councillor Hakata was talking about the urban forest, but I'm not sure where the funding for the urban forest comes from, so I'm not sure, because it's not in the budget. And I am really, we live, you represent Fortis Green, which is very leafy.
Muswell Hill.
Sorry, Muswell Hill, which is very leafy. I'm next door to you in Hornsey, which is pretty leafy, most of it. We live in, in pretty leafy parts of the borough, but really there are parts of the borough which have very, very little tree cover. And I'm really concerned that the replacement, the policy of replacement, I would rather see us maybe even campaigning for funding for, to replace a tree or that's been diseased or something like that. Or, if somebody has an insurance claim and a tree outside their house is cut down because of an insurance claim, could we not ask them to help us fund a new tree outside their house, kind of, whatever, but we're not, it's like for like, and I'm just not convinced we're going to be planting that many trees on the east of the borough under this, so.
Yeah, if you look at page 17, which is the borough map showing the location of the sponsored trees, you can see the majority of them are in the west. So.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think we need a proposal around that. Whether it's a proposal even to say that we need to raise, even if it's, within our budget, maybe some of the budget going into raising money.
Yeah.
So looking, using some of the budget to raise funding. What do you think, Aldridge?
Going back to what Gideon said earlier, I feel there shouldn't be any lighting in big parks, especially like Finsbury Park. There should be no lighting. I think parks at night should go back to nature.
Well, I think, yeah.
Sorry, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Look, it's dark. You say to people that they can't go to a park at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
I think the issue, the danger is, and it's come up in another place where this was discussed. The difficulty that, no, not the House of Lords. The difficulty is that, if you look at the parks, so for example, Priory Park, you can't light the park sufficiently, especially where there are trees, to mean that there aren't areas of shadow where somebody could be hiding. And the real danger is that when some of the park is lit, and I think it came up in terms of Finsbury Park, if some of the park is lit, then it gives a false sense of security, and people think, oh, well, that's lit, and so we can walk through there after dark. And unfortunately, it really isn't safe to walk through most of our parks after dark, especially if you're walking far away from the road. And people then get a false sense of security, and they don't recognise that in all those areas that aren't lit, there could be danger. And certainly I know like one of our concerns is to actually have the parks locked again, because they used to be locked.
When we used to have park rangers. Yeah.
That's right, and they used to be locked. And I know from the discussions that we've had with the police, our local park, is that the police really do want Priory Park locked because a lot of crime takes place in Priory Park. If they're chasing somebody, they run off to Priory Park. It's not safe, and my huge concern would be to give a false sense of security.
One of the other parks that, before you joined council, the Dems controlled the Stations Park, which is in Strawberry, isn't it? Yeah, that was an issue that came up on the doorstep quite a lot, about the antisocial behaviour in that park after dark. It's another park that needs to be looked at.
Unfortunately, the Stations Park, because it's standing between street lights.
Yeah.
It is a certain degree of lighting units, and that's why we want to be able to stop the antisocial behaviour.
I do make you right about part of street lighting. I hadn't thought of it in the way that you suggest, but perhaps if it is dark in the evening,
so maybe
people going in there.
so maybe that maybe I don't know if that I don't think it's a recommendation for the budget. They're putting the money into lighting the parks, but presumably they must know about the danger issues, because this has come up with officers before, that where the lighting we do need, so for example, if there's a path to the tennis court, for example, people are going to be playing on the floodlit tennis courts after dark, then that's the kind of area, and they're quite close to the road, where you'd have lighting. But yeah, I think it is.
Just can we make the recommendation on trees?
Yeah, can we go back to
there
it?
should be some, because I think you're right. I notice it as well, because although my ward is a Tottenham ward, part of it used to be in the old Wood Green constituency, right. And you can notice I've got some roads where there's lots and lots of trees, and then you go to, because I'm always out about, you go to Bruce Grove, for instance,
I know,
which is a wall that really struggles to have a number of trees, and I think we've already had it from Simon Farrow earlier, that there is an acknowledgement that they know they're better educated than we were, say, 20 years ago about some of the trees that we planted back in the day. Some cherry trees, you should never plant them. They just create havoc. And being as they know now that if we was to put extra investment into trees, they would be planting the right trees. I think there is some kind of recommendation around specific acknowledgement about the east of the borough and the lack of trees. So how you want to word that is entirely up to you.
Sorry, Chair. So from what you've said, it says that there's two recommendations here. One is that you would like to see the replacement, the tree planting programme, to be more than net neutral. You want to see an increase in trees over a long period of time. And then secondary to that is around addressing a long-term disparity between east and western tree coverage, and seeking assurances from Cabinet that that'll be addressed as part of this programme that you're rolling out. I don't know if you were also seem to be suggesting that you would like to seek assurances around the street lighting in parks, and that there's a balance between public safety concerns and
if we could have a
wildlife habitat.
I think if we could have something about that, because we do know that certain people complain a lot if the street light is out of order, but we do need to not give that false sense of security. It's not safe. I mean, somebody was attacked recently in Ali Pali, just walking through from Ali Pali station down across the park, and people take that cut, and it's, if you put in lighting, then you're just making people think that they can walk there, and if there's no lighting, people are less likely to think it's safe to walk across a park. It's not safe. Sorry?
Can I come in with a third suggestion? Sorry, that is me. There we go. That was that buzzing from my phone. Apologies, third suggestion there. I'm unsure about that last one. It's a difficult balance trying to find, women's safety versus nightlife and biodiversity. It's a tricky one. But yeah, just on the page 81, road casualty reduction. So if you look at it there, about halfway down, it talks about active travel and about cycling infrastructure. If you look at cycling infrastructure in terms of what's funded, there's 34 cycle tracks planned, of which 32 of them are unfunded, 25 LTNs, 22 of them are unfunded. So a lot of these schemes are looking towards future grants to try and get them. And I think if you weigh that money up, I think it comes to something like 22.5 million or 21.2 million, so I've got here. And obviously, if we're spending 50 million on the Civic Centre and then not spending this 21.2 million on cycling and active travel, it does feel disappointing. I don't think I'm going to get agreement with you all on this, but that's something I would suggest, that we'd rather be spending money on active travel than on the Civic Centre, but that's my personal opinion.
Personally, I think that I appreciate the issues of funding the Civic, but it's a listed building and we have a responsibility to maintain it. So we can't just board it up and leave it there, because our responsibility is to fix it and maintain it. A lot of the funding is to do with things like asbestos, which is why we're not meeting in the Civic now. And so if we're going to have to do it, then we need to do it properly.
And I mean this most sincerely. When I used to chair the North Central London Health Committee, I'd go to other boroughs. Scott, you go to Islington, Barnet, Enfield, Camden. Our civic centre is an absolute embarrassment, quite frankly, compared to the others. Absolute embarrassment. When we were looking at doing the rota, I would always find a way of not getting councillors from other boroughs coming to the civic centre. I know it makes for good copy. Oh, it's £50 million. But what would you do? What would you do because it's a listed building?
Spend it on cycling infrastructure, spend it on LTNs.
No. What
would
you
spend it on actual things that the public uses rather than a civic centre that we use?
Yeah, but what would you do with that building? That's what I asked you. I'm genuinely interested. I know we don't want to have that debate, but what would you do with the building? Pull it down?
I would put it down and chuck us in an office somewhere that would cost us about 5 million.
But if it's a listed building, how can we do that?
We can't pull it down.
Exactly.
I mean,
veering from
yeah. I mean, but I think
did anticipate this issue.
I mean, I think that is the issue, is that it's a listed building, and you know, if it wasn't a listed building, we may not be in this position, but we are.
That being said, you are more than welcome to put forward recommendations around active travel and cycle schemes. Yeah, obviously, possibly not in comparison to the Civic Centre, but
Could we say that as part of the road safety strategy, as part of the funding, we would like to see more money into cycle lanes? Because at the moment, from what I understand, is the money is going into improving in junctions and things like that. But we'd actually like to see some of the money going into dedicated cycle lanes.
Sorry, can I just quickly clarify? Is it cycle lanes specifically, or the active travel across?
No, it's multiple things. So you're looking at give me a second here. Cycle tracks, LTNs, walking schemes, school streets, cycle parking schemes. Just there's so much unfunded stuff that the council is currently looking to pick up in later grants and schemes, but grants and schemes may not come forward, and then we end up in a situation where none of these things happen, but they're all lovely plans. We could move some of the money around, true, but some of these things like roads are also very important. It's a question of where do we get the money from is the issue, isn't it?
I think we could say, I mean, in terms of active travel, we're talking about things as well, such as buses and that's really tied up with TfL, and are they going to have the buses and so on. But what we can do is we can do cycle lanes, and that would make such a difference, because I don't cycle after dark, because I can't cycle here because it's not safe. How am I going to get up the high street? I'm a really insecure cyclist. I can't get to this building on a bike. I could just about get to the Civic because I could kind of go around the back and the Penstock, and then after dark I can't use the Penstock footpaths. But now it's just like Whiteman Road isn't that great, and it would make so much difference if we just improved our cycling infrastructure. I'd be happy to cycle if I knew I could do it safely. So I think more than anything else is cycling, more than walking. For me, it's just we would get so many more people on their bikes if we just made it safer to cycle. Councillor Calverwell.
Just to say, excuse me, the cycle lanes, especially at the bottom of Alexander Palace, that goes into quite a dark area, and then, yeah, good, yeah. And there, even if we put lights, I wouldn't suggest people cycle at night because it's still too dark. But going back to cycling, I lived in Holland for 2 years. I mean, if you really want to see proper cycling, go to Holland. It's absolutely superb. Really, it's the creme de la creme.
Yeah, it's also a different culture.
Actually, it's not all that flat because I lived in Zandvoort, and Zandvoort is quite hilly.
Yeah, I think what the amazing thing about Holland is the culture. You know, everybody of all ages and disabilities and.
So, Ian.
I'm not sure if this would be a recommendation or not, so I seek your guidance. But on the Highways Assets Maintenance Programme, page 80, this is the largest multi-million chunk of capital bids, so it's serious money. And it says that the bid is funded by council borrowing for the first year. Thereafter, it has been assumed that there will be grant funding available. Is the Scrutiny Committee, not our group, but the Scrutiny Committee, are they happy that that is a reasonable assumption? Because if it ain't, that's a lot of money. And I'm not sure if that's a recommendation or just an observation, but I just thought I'd flag it up because it strikes me as a mighty big assumption.
This entire thing is built on the assumption of future funds.
Yeah, well, I suppose so, but this seems to be a particularly egregious, that's the word.
Obviously, the recommendations that you're making are to Cabinet, and it's for Scrutiny to ratify those decisions as the decision-making body. It is, yes, but yeah. So the recommendation should be to Cabinet, and the response would be there. But certainly, it's something for OSC to the check and point out when she goes through the recommendations. But certainly, in terms of recommendation, if you would like to ask for clarity around future funding models and I'm sure you could ask for some information behind, like, as to the figures behind this and what they've done to it.
Maybe. I don't think we're necessarily going to be getting all that much money from TfL because they're possibly going to be far too stretched. If it still exists, yeah. Is there anything else that we have, any specific things that we want to raise? Any items? No?
You satisfied with the response you got?
I mean, I'm fairly satisfied with the response on drains and gullies. I was in an area, as Scott was, we were very badly flooded. The Moselle comes down from Queenswood and the hill and floods our areas. So yeah, I'm happy with the investment.
I'd like to have that discussion next time with Councillor Chandwani, because I know she's appearing the next meeting, isn't she? So,
yeah, she's going to be at the next meeting, so let's have a discussion. But also the emergency. What I'm quite pleased about in this budget, which didn't come up here, is that there's extra funding going into the corporate budget for the emergency response team, because we certainly, where I lived, saw our policies need writing, and it wasn't a great response. So yeah, there are all kinds of things. So it's quite good. Yeah, we need to have funding in that to that. That's quite good. Sorry, next item on the agenda is we've got the work programme. So we've got an evidence gathering session tomorrow evening. Phone. Where we're going to be looking at LTNs.
Is that virtual, Phil?
Yes.
Good, because I'm.
It's virtual. I'd appreciate it if you could think of questions that we want to ask about the LTN program. I certainly was slightly concerned tonight that there's a proposal to start consulting people on the ladder when there's an LTN being proposed for right next to the ladder. And how are we going to know how the traffic's going to be flowing through the area in advance of the LTN in West Green coming in and bedding it down? And they do bed down because my husband works on Blackstock Road and it was an absolute nightmare for 6 to 8 months. And now the traffic's dissipated and it's like it was, Blackstock Road is like it was before the LTN, and there are no cars driving in the residential roads in that area between Blackstock Road and the Holloway Road.
So the whole stand line's got to be.
But it is going to take, yeah, that's St Anne's, West Green area. That's going to take, it's going to take 8 months to a year to bed down. Well, I'm a little bit concerned. If you start consulting people based on what is there now, then you don't know what's going to be, that it should actually, the process should be do one, bed down, do the next one, bed down, because then you'll see what you need. But if you do it too quickly, then how are you going to know what you need? And the huge risk that we have is if we put in an LTN and we pull it out, we will get no more government funding. All the government funding to Ealing has been cut. All the government funding to Harrow has been cut. Any area that's taken out the LTNs, the government has said, okay, you took it out, that's it, no more funding. You're not allowed to bid for any other grant. So, which is not to say we shouldn't be putting them in, but we need to be really careful when we put them in, that we're not, yes, you can consult after, use it and consult if it's not working, you want to take it out. But you may just lose all your government funding if you take it out. So you've got to be very careful when you put it in.
Who will be on the call tomorrow?
So for the evidence gathering session, it is the panel members and officers. So
so it's just in-house officers?
It is in-house officers. So this was obviously the first evidence gathering session, and the idea I had was that this was to be an introductory session where they set out basically what the 3 schemes are that went to Cabinet last week, and what the overall big picture proposals are for the LTNs coming forward. And then from there, you can receive further evidence around what other boroughs are doing, what works, what doesn't.
So the admin colleagues, basically.
Yeah, thank you. Do we have any other items of urgent business? Yeah, just the work programme, but
just one quick question. Wouldn't it be easier to just computerize a simulation of an LTN?
They do that.
Well, I have. That's what I'm saying. When I was in Holland, they did that. And when you a big company like Sainsbury's, you can do miracles.
I think it's really different. My understanding with what happened with the Sainsbury's, it was before long before my time, but my understanding was that that what happened was that they didn't get planning permission, or TfL wouldn't allow them to make the changes to green lanes that they were expecting. There was something to do with that. And that's why they ended up with the scheme as it was, which obviously the traffic there. I have been stuck in the car park at Sainsbury's once for 4.5 hours. Yeah, a lot, and I don't go there now. Okay, so our work plan going forward is that we have SEMA coming to the next meeting, which is on the 4th of March. And that's going to be the last one before the election. But we will be having meetings coming in on the TfL the next couple of months. I mean, yeah, the low traffic neighbourhood, sorry, LTNs. Thank you. Thank you, we can stop recording.